Hi, my name's Tim Macpherson. I'm a director of the Angling Trust. I'm also publisher of saltwater boat angling. And this is another in a series of videos that the Angling Trust is doing in collaboration with Saltwater about various aspects of recreational angling. And in this one we're talking sharks. And with me I've got Dr. Bryce Stewart and Dr. Georgia Jones, and they're both biologists or marine biologists. Georgia specialises in sharks in particular, and they're launching a survey about sharks, and they're enlisting the help of anglers, particularly Angling Trust members, and they want us to help gather data. So we thought it'd be a good idea just to explain how this is going to work. So without further ado, if you can give us a bit of background about yourselves briefly. Georgia, what's your history in shark biology?
Well, going back to the very beginning, my interest in sharks probably started quite similarly to a lot of other people's, in that my dad, in his infinite wisdom, let me watch Jaws when I was about 5. So my interest probably started off as terror, but I'm very happy to report that the terror is now gone and been replaced completely with fascination. I started actually working with sharks back in 2010, and that was over in the Seychelles, where I worked for 4 years, 3.5 of which was with the Marine Conservation Society of Seychelles, and that's where I really started working hands-on with sharks and actually local fishers over there. So I was looking at marine protected areas, I was tagging, so I worked with whale sharks, bulls, tigers and lemons mostly, which was pretty eye-opening and fairly fantastic. And then I managed to get myself a PhD on great whites, which the fieldwork for that was based in South Africa, and I was looking at their diet, a little bit of their movement, and the differences in the biology and ecology between the sexes and life stages. And whilst doing that, I decided that we've actually got loads of really brilliant species around the UK that most people don't realise that we have, and a lot of people don't know very much about them, or the fact that several of them are actually quite endangered. So I set up a charity based in Dorset called Shark Stuff, so that I could start running education and research projects on our local sharks. And that was when I was actually reached out to by members of the recreational angling community, who found out that there was someone down in Dorset wanting to do research on sharks, and they reached out to me to be like, we want to be involved, we think this is brilliant. And that was just fantastic, and it's kind of blossomed from there. Yeah.
Very lucky. White sharks, yes, that's quite a subject, isn't it? Bryce, what about you? What's your background?
Yeah, I mean, I was also sort of inspired from a young age, a little bit different. So you may be able to tell I'm from Australia originally, and my parents actually moved up to Papua New Guinea when I was 8 years old. And it's a beautiful, amazing place with lots of coral reefs and lots of sharks. And I've always loved fishing, and my first sort of introduction to sharks was the fact that they kept eating the fish we were trying to catch.
Yes.
So my record for one day was to bring home 6 fish heads and no actual fish. But I then, as you know, when I became a teenager, I took up scuba diving, and I started to see them underwater and really realize what amazing creatures they are, and subsequently went back to Australia and trained to become a marine biologist. Did my PhD on the Great Barrier Reef, where I was actually working on groupers, and likewise I was tagging them, but we had similar problems with sharks, would occasionally come in and try and steal my my study species, on occasion successfully. But yeah, so I mean, like most marine biologists, I guess I've had a long fascination with them. Moved to the UK. I'm now based at the University of York. I work on lots of different aspects of fisheries and marine conservation. But most recently, I've been doing some work with the Maldives whale shark research program. So I've done a bit of work on whale sharks, which are, pretty incredible species as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I have to confess, I did a marine biology degree as well, but went in a different direction. But I've still always been fascinated with fish. I think we all share a fascination with sharks. And I think it's true to say, I mean, we've got 4 main species, haven't we, in UK waters, one of which is pretty scarce, the mako, which is kind of on the extremely endangered list, I believe, isn't it? And blues, which have made quite a comeback lately, and bald eagles and threshers, which are kind of less common but still targeted. Now, just sort of moving on from the general subject of sharks to this survey, can you just explain a little bit about the shark survey that we're introducing here, and what you want from it, and maybe we can talk a little bit about UK sharks a bit later.
Yeah. So just picked up on something really interesting, that when you talk about sharks, and I think when a lot of recreational anglers talk about sharks, they're thinking about those species that you mentioned. And the survey about recreational angling for sharks includes all shark species, so that's everything down to your dogfish.
Right.
Are caught quite often, so it's kind of the full spectrum of what are technically shark species caught in the UK. So that's everything from poor beagles, threshers, six gills, down to like your taupe, your smoothhound, spiny dogfish, and even the lesser and greater spotted cat sharks, which are the dogfish as well. So so if you catch any of those species, we're interested in your participation.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so it's really quite a comprehensive, wide-ranging survey about all elasmobranchs in UK waters, or at least ones that are not rays, I guess. What exactly do you want to find out about these sharks?
Well, it's kind of based on, and I'm looking at my notes, so excuse me as my eyes drift to my little notebook that I've prepared. So we're covering kind of four key areas really, and the first is we want to describe the recreational fishery. So that's what species are we catching, kind of the very broad like geographic distribution, not asking for any specific locations of anyone's marks. We wouldn't do that. We're looking at handling practices, so how anglers handle the sharks once they've caught them and then release them if they do release them. We're looking at anglers' perceptions of the conservation status of the various sharks around our coast, because we know that they'll have actually really good insight into the numbers that they're catching, and good insight into trends over time as well, if they think numbers have increased recently or not.
So how is this data going to be collected?
So this will be an online survey that you can fill out. It should take about 20 minutes, and the link will be available from the Angling Trust website, I believe, and we'll be posting it across various social media as well.
So what form does the actual input of data take? I mean, so you talked about the kind of stuff, the data you want to come out at the end of it, but how are anglers, so when they catch go on a fishing trip and catch some bull huss, they'll come back and what specific questions are you going to ask?
I see. So it's not capturing kind of point of capture data in real time. It's more, how many of these do you catch, do you think, a year?
Right,
and
okay.
It's kind of tick box options. So it's pretty simple. Shouldn't take too long to do.
So you want anglers to do this once, effectively. So somebody,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so somebody who's fishing in the Bristol Channel is going to talk about, give you a lot of data about spur dog, for instance, which are prolific down there, and then maybe off of Sussex, where we catch a lot of bull huss and smooth hounds, you're going to get that kind of geographical split in data, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and what when you've got this data, what are you going to do with it?
Well, we'd like to obviously analyse it. We are committed to making it open access to the anglers so that they can see the same data that we can see the responses, anonymised, of course, so that no one's personal data will be available to see. We'd like to write it up as a scientific paper and potentially use it to help inform policy if applicable.
Right, okay. I mean, anglers are quite suspicious about giving data of, as you probably know, because it's this historic. It's not a suspicion that I personally share, but I know a lot of anglers who are quite concerned about data collection, and the reason for that is because they fear that the data that anglers give is going to be misused. Now, I would never suggest that you would do that, but you know what we need to do is try and reassure anglers, I suppose, that the data that they're giving is not going to result in people being stopped from fishing for certain types of sharks, for instance. I mean, that's your, as far as I can see, that's one of the barriers that you might find about getting people to participate in this. So what would you say to that, Brian?
I would say, I know that Bryce has probably got quite a bit to say on this particular subject. Very shortly, we're committed to working with anglers and feel very strongly that recreational anglers are massive stakeholders in our shark fisheries. They've actually been legally recognised now as well. And that recreational angling is one of the most effective ways to monitor our populations. So we think that it's really important that it continues.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really key point that George has made about the fact that, you know, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of anglers out there every, weekend at least, effectively collecting data all over the country. And this is why we're looking at quite a broad-ranging survey, different species, different times of year as well, if people can remember what they catch at different times of year. So we're really building up a picture of the whole shark angling community and therefore also the sharks. And if scientists were to want to go out and collect that sort of information themselves, they could never do it because you'd need to be everywhere at once and you'd need, hundreds of boats and people and all the rest of it. So this is where anglers can actually act as scientists themselves effectively by collecting this information. And ultimately what we're trying to do with this is a few different things. So first of all, we want to demonstrate the importance of this activity. Actually the fact that there are people doing it all over the country, that, they're spending a lot of money on things like boats and tackle and bait and accommodation where they're staying as well. So by demonstrating that economic and cultural importance as well, you're sort of showing that sea anglers are important stakeholders, and therefore they deserve to be heard when the government is thinking about decisions about how to manage the ocean. And I guess also at the same time, because we have all these different shark species, but not really any of them are particularly well understood. They're also changing with climate change, and that as well, is that we will be able to get a much more accurate picture of what the status of stocks is and how they're changing over time. And I think everyone wants the best, most accurate data. And for example, some of the categories that species have been put into on the red list, people might not agree with, and they might think, well, actually that species is really abundant. That information can actually go and inform those red lists. They are not final decisions. They can be adapted and changed. So it's a whole combination of things, really, just to illustrate the importance of the shark angling community.
Yeah. Getting back to sharks, Burdo is quite an interesting example because they were wiped out completely by commercial fishing many years ago, 25 years ago, and now they're pretty abundant. I mean, you can catch them for fun in the Bristol Channel, as I said, but also we're seeing them in the Eastern Channel here now, which I haven't seen spur dogs up this way ever since I was a kid. The reason I mention that is because obviously a lot of recreational anglers are quite sensitive about commercial fishing. A lot of them are quite ill-informed about commercial fishing as well. That's got to be said too. But what a lot of them will worry about is if they're reporting a lot of, spur dog, for instance, that if it gets taken off the endangered list, then commercial fishing will be able to resume. I'm not asking you to reassure anybody that that's not going to happen, but I mean, that is an issue, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it potentially is. I mean, we personally aren't able to, change any of those decisions.
Of course.
We're not that important, but we can certainly inform those decisions through the information that we hopefully will get from the anglers. And, I mean, one of the things it's worth saying is that recreational angling, is starting to be seen around the world as, a really important, at times, alternative to commercial fishing.
Yeah.
It can actually bring in more to the economy, and then particularly if people are practicing catch and release and handling species in the right way, then it actually becomes a much more sustainable way of interacting with nature. And so, we will be able to sort of put those arguments forward depending on the information we get.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's important that recreational anglers get involved in this kind of work. Just a question. I mean, are you anticipating from this research that you're going to find out anything particularly surprising?
Just from the very small pilot that we ran, actually, we did get something really encouraging out of it, that we ask at the end of the survey if anglers are currently involved in a scientific research programme, if it's available, and if not, would they like to be? And I think it was 100% of our pilot respondents wanted to be involved in scientific research, and that's just fantastic and really encouraging.
Have you, I presume you have had contact with the Shark Angling Club of Great Britain about this, have you? And
yeah.
I mean, they do an awful lot of, obviously a lot of fishing for sharks, but the sort of wealth of knowledge that they have within their club members is actually quite extraordinary, and it must, give you some sort of historical background as well, does it?
Yeah, they were included, I believe, in the pilot, and we worked very closely with not just the Angling Trust, but with Simon Thomas, who did the Blue Shark Talk and is the scientific advisor for the Shark Angling Club, to help us refine the survey questions and make sure that we were putting them in the right way and asking the relevant things.
So, just to conclude, how many anglers do you need to get involved in this? Is there a sort of minimum level that you want, or does it not really matter?
I'm looking at Bryce as the survey.
I mean, we're going to say as many as possible. The more people who fill it out, the better the information is. And when we're thinking about wanting to put forward these arguments about the size of the sector and the importance, it's not just economic, but it's also for well-being as well. People get a lot of enjoyment out of being out there, even if they don't catch anything. I mean, I'm a fairly unsuccessful fisherman. But I think, the line is, a bad day fishing is better than a good day in the office. That's true for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the more the merrier, basically, and particularly from lots of different parts around the country, people fishing for different species, whether it's the smaller ones, the larger ones, shore or boat. We really want to get a good picture of what's going on.
And how can anglers get involved in the survey? Where can they find out about it, apart from looking at the link at the end of this video?
We'll be sharing it across various social media platforms, so keep an eye out if you're a member of any Facebook groups based on UK shark angling, through the Angling Trust as well, and probably through our universities, but I'm not sure how many anglers are going to be particularly interested in our universities.
Right, okay. This survey is happening now. It's live now. I'm presuming it's going to go on for as long as you want it to. But is it a one-off thing, or are you going to do more of these?
No, it's actually kind of part of a long-term collaborative plan that we've been putting together with the Angling Trust, and part of a bigger kind of overreaching project. So it's going to lead on to, there's going to be another forum which we're going to do on best practice handling methods for anglers. We've got, we're going to be feeding back the results directly to anglers. We've got some other things in the pipeline with the Angling Trust that we're excited to work on together as well regarding recreational shark angling. So it's definitely a long-term thing. We hope to be involved with the community for the foreseeable future.
Great. I like the idea about the handling aspect of it, because I think anglers have learned a lot over the years about best practice, in terms of treating fish properly, basically. And the way we do that is much better than it was even 10 years ago. But I think it's also crucial because we are now part of the fishing establishment, in the Fisheries Act, and our profile has gone up. We want to make sure that members of the public who are not interested in fishing but are conservationists or, worry about wildlife, don't think that we are just running around ripping hooks out of fish all the time. And of course, sharks and elasmobranchs, their metabolism is slightly different from other fish, isn't it? I mean, the way you handle them is quite important. And can be different from the way you might handle bream or bass or stuff like that. Is that right?
Absolutely. And while there is some best practice handling advice available online, it's quite passive, and we really wanted to have the opportunity. So again, Dr. Simon Thomas is going to deliver this part because he is infinitely more qualified than I am, but to actually properly engage with anglers and give them the tools that they need to make the fishery as sustainable as possible.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think that's a really important point. You can read all the textbooks or even sort of stuff online about this, but actually to get people like Simon, who is actively involved in improving handling techniques and learning from other anglers as well. I mean, already we've, as George has said, we've had some really good feedback from people interested in the survey, providing their knowledge, and that's the way forward. Hopefully we can provide a little bit of science, and then we can combine that with the practical experience and knowledge of anglers for the best possible outcome.
Fabulous. Well, that's great. Okay. Thanks very much. That's fascinating. Thanks very much, Georgina and Bryce. That's brilliant. And obviously, we'll be encouraging everybody to take part in this survey. I know a lot of people catch all sorts of shark species. I know the Angling Trust will do what they can to make sure as many anglers take part as possible. It's a great piece of work, and I look forward to seeing the results of it. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us.